There are no political solutions with extremists who are tampering with Arab societies under oppressive alien religious slogans and who want to move sick practices to Lebanon. The only solution today is for the militants to withdraw from Irsal and its outskirts, and the return of the state with its agencies to this day Lebanese town.
This terrorist attack which happened yesterday did not take place by coincidence. It was not a spur of the moment. It was previously planned a long time ago.
It is a crime that Hezbollah goes to Syria, and a crime also those terrorists come to Irsal and occupy it, while this region has protected refugees for 3 years. Hezbollah is largely responsible for what is happening in Irsal, but it did not participate in the battles.
The countries that are not capable of offering us any military aid should at least file a complaint at the ICC regarding the practices of the ISIL in Mosul and Irsal.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Between the Lines with me, Sergeant Preradovic. Well, the Lebanese state is being confronted with a crisis which it has been anticipating since the outbreak of the Syrian conflict over 3 years ago. Last week, violent clashes broke out in the country's northeastern town of Arsal between the Lebanese army and militants belonging to the so-called Islamic State, as well as the Syrian Al-Qaeda affiliate, the Nusra Front. But this was by no means an isolated incident, and many in Lebanon are worried about what happens next. To discuss this, let's bring in our guests for this evening. In the studio, we're joined by a political analyst, Mr. Ridwan Rizeh. And from London, we have Dr. Khalid Kamareddin. He is the head of the Gathering for the Syrian Revolution and a political activist. A warm welcome to both of you, gentlemen. Mr. Rizeh, if I can begin with you here. Let's start with this ceasefire arrangement that just came into effect recently. Do you think it's going to hold?
Before I came to the studio, I had some information that clashes took place in Arsal now, and the ceasefire did not implement, and it's the battles between the both sides, the Lebanese army against the terrorist groups in Arsal, is now on very, very severe. So that means this kind of ceasefire couldn't take a place in Arsal, and it seems that the whole situation is very shaky because it's an unpredictable situation, and it's out of control. I don't believe any of the Lebanese group are eligible to talk or to have a serious talk with those groups, because as we have experienced them in Syria and elsewhere, it seems that the way they deal their battles or their plans out of reach, out of control. They don't believe in any negotiations, not even.
But this is new for Lebanon specifically. These recent clashes, that's a new development. Do you think it's a game changer for the Lebanese situation or the situation in Lebanon?
No, I don't think so. But now it came up to the surface because Lebanon was deeply involved in the crisis in Syria, and they wanted to deny that. The politicians or the government, in Lebanon didn't want to admit that Lebanon was the mainstream of the arms to Syria. And many shipments came to Lebanon through Tripoli port, bay, and that was smuggled into Syria. And also,
you're talking about weapons going to the militant groups fighting the government.
Yeah, that was years ago. So that means, in all means, that the Lebanese, some Lebanese groups or Lebanon itself as a country was deeply involved in that. And we have to mention also that Lebanon was the training camp for those forces, as well as Jordan. And
well, on that point, Mr. Rizeh, if I can stop you right there, because I want to bring in Dr. Kamareddin in London. Dr. Kamareddin, you heard there what Mr. Rizeh had to say. Who do you blame for this recent outbreak of violence in Lebanon? Is the Lebanese army partly to blame here for waiting too long to go into places like Arsal?
Good evening to you and to your guest and to all the viewers. Who's to blame here really? To blame is the Lebanese army. They should have sealed the border from the start. And to be frank with you, in Lebanon there is no government, there is a militia. And the terrorist group of Hezbollah, they are to blame. They came to Syria to fight in Syria, and you are quite right when you said that is at the beginning, you said that is being anticipated. Of course, if Hezbollah, they did not enter to Syria to fight with the Assad regime, the criminal Assad regime, against the Syrian people, the civilian people, this could not have happened. We do not want any fighting in Lebanon because our people, there is about 100,000 people in Arsal, and these people, they are civilian in Arsal. But now all the videos, everything shows what has been involved in the fighting in the last couple of days. They are Hezbollah there, and they say, and as you know, and everybody knows, they hijacked the Lebanese army. They are fighting in the name of the Lebanese army.
Okay, Mr. Kamaruddin, I want to stop you there because, as a matter of fact, a lot of the comments that you're making and a lot of these assertions are actually a little bit far-fetched, because I do want to get Mr. Dizes. I'll come right back to you in a moment, sir. I want to get your thoughts on some of this, Mr. Dizes. We heard there at the beginning of our show a soundbite from the leader of the March 14 parliamentary bloc, Mr. Saad Hariri, blaming, following this
well,
rhetoric,
I don't differentiate.
I
I personally, as a political activist or analyst, I don't differentiate Mr. Saad Hariri from the terrorist groups at all, because he was the main supporter of those terrorist groups at the beginning. We all remember Fatah Islam fighting in Nahr al-Barid, and that was a massacre against our Lebanese army, our national Lebanese army, and I don't accept from my colleague from London to call that we have a militia. We have a national army, and well respected and paid a very high price to protect the country. Well, the army was controlling the country very well, and your supporters in Lebanon, Mr. Kamaruddin, who hold the Lebanese army from implementing itself and taking its policies, implementing its policies on the ground. So that was, the Lebanese army was not given the green light, was held back, and in order to facilitate your terrorist group smuggling into Syria. You wanted to fight Syria, you wanted to have or to make Lebanon as your back base and your back training base and the mainstream of your supplies of arms, weapons, fighters coming to Lebanon and sneaking into Syria. You wanted to fight Syria, you should have gone to Syria, you shouldn't have use anyway or abuse the situation in Lebanon at all with your supporters.
Mr. Kamaruddin, these are very dangerous groups which are operating on the border between Syria and Lebanon, the so-called Islamic State militants, the Al-Qaeda affiliated Al-Nusra Front. Even if Hezbollah is taking a role in the fight here, isn't that a good thing? Because if the Lebanese army is not equipped, as you say, to deal with this threat.
Your respectable guest should not fudge the question. Let's go back to the main issue. Hezbollah is fighting in Syria, and he created the problem. His fighting in Syria is against international law. Against international law. He's acting outside the government, the Lebanese government, and he's fighting in Syria. Why the Lebanese? Hezbollah, it is in the government, and this will put force in the Lebanese government under the international law. Because we consider now the Lebanese government, they are fighting against the Syrian people, the civilian Syrian people. They are fighting against the revolution.
And those Syrian people includes people, civilian people in Qusayr, Mr. Kamaruddin. They were including civilian people in Qusayr, attacking those people. The villages are along the borders with Lebanon. That was the reasons behind the attack. That was beyond, that was entering Hezbollah Syria and was not involved at all. That was 2 years ago, before any fighter of Hezbollah went into Syria. Your groups who represents the revolution, just between the bracket, attacked 35 villages, Lebanese villages, just because they are from different sects or many sects, and they are not the same sect. You wanted to kick them out just because of their beliefs, for their religion, faith, for their and they're not Syrians at all. They are not. They are Lebanese inside the Syrian borders. What's left from the Sykes-Picot Treaty, which divided the country. So after Hezbollah went to protect those villages, what you attacking now, you are playing on the same song, the same way that Hezbollah to be blamed. Even Mr. Saad Hariri or any political person in the government, as you said, that must not blame Hezbollah. Hezbollah was going there to protect itself, to protect its villages. And as we know that attack was about to be launched over the villages in Arsal, near Arsal, on Labwi, Nabi Uthman, and Ras Baalbek, and other villages, just because they are Christians and Shiite, not because they are with or against the revolution, just because those Al-Qaeda groups don't believe in any different ideas. They just want to invade, to kill, to steal, and then to control. You cannot implement that, or you cannot force us to believe your way, or you to follow the way that you want us to follow.
Okay, Mr. Kamaluddin, your response there, but Mr. Reza makes a very valid point. These groups have a very dangerous agenda to divide the region along sectarian lines.
Okay. First, I didn't finish my answer, and as you and your guests will appreciate, there is a lag of time between me and you. If I don't mind, if both of you want to put the questions, I don't mind, but give me the time to answer, or at least don't intervene when I'm answering.
Okay, well, go ahead and answer, please.
Your guest cannot fetch the question, and here I'm here to talk about facts. When Hezbollah intervened in Syria, they said they're going to protect Sid Zainab, the shrine in Sid Zainab. They didn't go there to protect X, Y, and Z. One single question: what Hezbollah is doing in Aleppo now is about 300 kilometers from Lebanon, is about over 400 kilometers from Sid Zainab. What Hezbollah is doing in Hama, it is, all of it is Sunni. There is no Hezbollah is taking order from Iran. He's talking about Al-Qaeda in Syria. I don't deny there is Al-Qaeda and Nusra, Daesh, whatever. When they first they started in January, February 2012, which is 8 months after the revolution. The Hezbollah took his order from Iran, and Iran, they do not want the regime to fall in Syria, because it is within the same group that's protecting Israel, and that's what they're doing.
Mr. Kamaruddin, let me stop you here. Hezbollah now considered that the coming of those Al-Qaeda groups into Syria, trying to ignite a sectarian war, trying to divide Syria, trying to divide this country up on a sectarian basis, that will affect Lebanon and will affect the strategic depth of the revolution, of the resistance in Lebanon. Without the resistance in Lebanon, we cannot protect the country, because all national countries, all international countries, including Europe and USA, banned the Lebanese army from being armed and well prepared to protect the country against this Israel, which it does not mean much to you, I believe so, because now you are a very good allies and you have very strong relations with the Israelis. You don't consider this as an enemy. We still believe that Palestine is the main object of our aim, of our revolution. So the resistance in Lebanon must be well armed, must be well prepared to protect or to fight against all enemies. And we do consider that those Qaeda groups are our enemies, because one way or another they are representing and implementing the agendas of the Israelis and the Saudi Arabia also. The Saudis are deeply involved, up to their ears, in this war, and that's why I do believe that Mr. Saad Hariri is not just saying the truth. He's a liar, he's a big liar, because he cannot say the truth at all, and he cannot come up and saying, well, I cannot protect Lebanon and I cannot back up the Lebanese army just because I'm a Saudi and I cannot go against the Saudis' policies.
Mr. Kamaluddin, how can we still deny that Hezbollah doesn't have legitimate security interests in Syria with everything that we're seeing occur in Lebanon, with the bombings and the sleeper cells, intelligence reports which have been circulated, which suggest that there are numerous sleeper cells, Al-Qaeda-linked sleeper cells across the country, and now these recent developments in the north. That poses a legitimate security threat to this country, does it not?
Hezbollah is a terrorist organization. It is a gang. Is working under of the order.
That is not
of
my
Walid
question,
Faqih.
Mr. Kamaruddin. I'm
They
asking you
came
if you think they have legitimate security interests in Syria
No,
when it
no,
comes
no.
to coping with these groups.
When I finish my answer, if I haven't answered your answer or your question, please ask me again and say you.
Okay, please go ahead and answer. I won't
You're not
interrupt
answering
you
the
if I could just
question.
get your answer on that particular point, sir.
Well, they have no right whatsoever. Even now, they have no right whatsoever. Israel, they're protecting the border of Israel. They are killing civilians against international law to go into another country. You've got a problem in Lebanon, go and sort it. He's saying Saudi Arabia. Let me tell you a secret. Saudi Arabia and Iran, they are working against the people of the area. He said they cannot arm the Lebanese army. Who paid 3 billion and yesterday is paying another 1 billion to France.
Still on the papers.
Paying another
Still
1
on the papers.
billion to France to buy arms. All this we know it. Look, there are people in the region. If you want to export your problem, you could do whatever you want. There are people in the region and they are terrorist group which they are created by this regime. This regime must go. This regime, they cannot stay. And the people of Syria, the people of Lebanon, the people of Saudi Arabia, everywhere, they should have democratic government which represents the will of the people. Let's not find another issue and say Qaeda or whatsoever. Who's fighting Al-Qaeda in Syria now? Is it Bashar al-Assad fighting Al-Qaeda? Is it Hezbollah fighting one of this Qaeda in Syria?
Well,
no, that is not true.
Mr. Kamaruddin, you want me to believe that the regime created a terrorist groups to kill the Syrian army and then to send them to Lebanon to fight the resistance in Lebanon and to kill the Lebanese soldiers? You want me to buy this kind of the story that blaming the regime of creating?
No, don't
well,
buy it.
I have
Look,
a document
sir,
here
let's
in
talk
my
facts.
well, I
Don't
have
buy
a
it.
document here in my pocket. I will show it to the public if you don't mind. This is from the Saudi Arabia Intelligence Service and the main prisons of Saudi Arabia. And I can tell you details about that, and I will translate this on air for the audience and for you too, saying that the Saud Athanyan, the secret bureau of the internal minister of Saudi Arabia.
Don't read.
During
How could you
no, I
believe
will
it
tell
is
you
true?
just.
How could you
this
believe
is
it is true?
just
It is true.
offering convicted people who were convicted by crimes, drug smuggling, raping, and stealing, and that he's offering them amnesty up on a term going to fight to fight into Syria. So this is all. This is a very secret, top secret document.
Okay, let me stop you right there. We're gonna have the camera zoom in on that document, but Dr. Reza, Mr. Reza, I have to ask you. You know, it's a little bit difficult to imagine how this information would just be flowing out there and came to your possession.
No, this is not an information flowing.
No, I
this
will
is
ask your
top
grace.
secret
How did he
information.
get
How
the
did you come by
document?
this
How did he
information?
get
Mr.
the
Kamaruddin, I'll come back to you in a moment. I'll come back to you in a moment because I do want to get your response, Mr. Kamaruddin. I want to get your response, Mr. Kamaruddin, please.
Let me
a
finish
moment.
this. This is
Go
very
ahead,
very
Mr. Reza.
important for everybody in the Arab region. This is very important. This is the first hard evidence that proves that Saudi Arabia is directly involved in organizing those terrorist groups and sending them everywhere. I believe first that the Lebanese government should kick out this monster who represents Saudi Arabia, the ambassador of Saudi Arabia, because this is proof that our children are being killed by the Saudi hands. And I will just tell you something, that those convicted people who are criminals, all right, and some of them were facing life sentence in jail and death penalties. 105 Yemenis, 21 Palestinians, 212 Saudis, 96 Sudanese, 254 Syrians, 82
Look, if you
Jordanians,
want to read for
68
yourself,
Somalis,
read. How did you get hold
32
of this document?
Afghanis,
How could you prove it?
194
One moment, Mr. Kamaruddin,
194
How could-
Egyptian,
how could you prove
200.3
it? It is a fact.
Pakistanis,
We get the point. We get the point.
23
We get the point,
Iraqis,
Mr.
and 44 Kuwaitis.
We get the point. How? Let's go back to the point. How did you get this information? How can you validate that this is in fact accurate?
Well, this is very accurate. It's from the Internal Ministry and the Intelligence Service of Saudi Arabia, and it's signed here by the Internal Minister and the Minister of Jails. All right, this is a very solid information, and this is not the question how did I get this and where did I get this. The question is I have this document to be shown to the public.
Mr. Kamaruddin, going back to you now, your response, of course, I have to say that this is not the first time that these intelligence reports have been circulated in Lebanon. Many other countries in the world seem to suggest the actions of these militant groups links to Riyadh.
The proof, it is in the pudding, as they say here in England. I've got this document, I've just wrote it. It's signed by Khomeini. He said, kill all Muslim, all Sunnis. Do you believe in any of that rubbish? I mean, signed by Khomeini. By Khamenei, by all this rubbish. I mean, look, let's talk facts here. Let's talk facts.
Well,
I will ask your guest, your distinguished guest. Is Hezbollah fighting in Syria is legal?
Yes.
Does he approve
Yes,
of
it is.
killing civilians in Syria?
Yes,
Does he approve Hezbollah to fight in Aleppo
Mr.
and Hama?
Kamaruddin,
In
if you
Hama
are
region,
asking
does
me
he
the
fight?
question, I can tell you that Hezbollah was late and delayed to enter Syria. He should have entered Syria from the first day of the what's so-called revolution, because I can ask you something. What's Mr. Kamaruddin?
No, it's right. What you said is right. So it's our right now to defend ourselves and get you and get Hezbollah, and we will not stop until we get hold of you.
It's not up on a sectarian purposes at all. It's up on fighting up all on fronts. People who are representing different agendas are representing Saudi Arabia and Israel, and also what we have, that's even the Americans has some hands, and they were having some parts in organizing those terrorist groups, and they backed them up and they paid them money. Why the Americans can fight into Syria and the Israelis can fight into Syria, and the Hezbollah or the Lebanese resistance groups cannot go and fight into Syria? Why? Those groups and Al-Qaeda groups, as you admitted yourself, Mr. Kamaruddin, that you have Al-Qaeda and up 52 different Islamic groups are fighting in Syria. Didn't you? We all know that. Whom do they represent in Syria? For whom are they fighting in Syria? For the Syrian people? No, it's against the regime. Also, no. I can assure you that it's not against the regime. It is they want just to break the backbones of any resistance that might create any future danger for the Israelis. They want to protect totally Israel. So Saudi Arabia wants to control by Wahhabism this Islamic world, and the Israelis wants to control over this whole region.
Okay. If I can just bring the discussion a little bit back to what we are seeing in Lebanon at the moment. Mr. Kamaruddin, I want to get your thoughts on this. Because we've seen this expansion of militant groups across Syria. We've seen it across Iraq most recently. Do you think that we're about to see a similar scenario in northern Lebanon, Tripoli, Akkad, and of course Arsal?
Look, what your guest is saying in the studio, that it was years ago, and still he's repeating the same thing. But now what happened just in the last months, this opens the whole thing. You cannot defend what you said. In Nawa, the regime, he threw 200 missiles in 1 minute, but he could just twist it 90 degrees and all of that could have gone to Israel. He did not, the regime in Syria did not fire a single bullet, a single one, in the last 40 years. Now, since 2006, Hezbollah did not fire a single bullet towards Israel, protected its border. And when 3 missiles came to Israel, Hezbollah said straight away, it's not me. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this because he signed not to do it. Let's talk real. here. What you said, we might have people in north of in Lebanon or in Iraq. In Iraq, 6 divisions, 120,000 people fully armed with tanks, missiles and everything, and they lost power to somebody, they said, between 8 and 15,000 people, the area of Syria, in less than 2 hours. The question will beg itself to say, why they did not go to Baghdad, which they were 30 kilometers from Baghdad. In the Congress, the head of the army, the 6th Fleet Army, when he said, we told al-Maliki, these people, they're coming, and he said, no, he didn't believe him. He didn't believe him. Look, there is a conspiracy against the region. I'm not defending Saudi Arabia or this, what his name, Hariri or anybody else. I'm defending facts. I'm defending our people.
Okay, so just so we're clear, Mr. Kamaruddin, are you suggesting that these governments? I just want to get something very. I just want to clear one point up, Mr. Kamaruddin, because this is where it gets very confusing. Are you actually suggesting that these governments in Baghdad and Damascus are creating these militant groups on purpose?
The Iranian and Saudi Arabia, they work for the same boss. They work for the Americans. The Iranian and the Saudi Arabia, they work for the same boss, and now Khamenei, he's in bed with Obama. He's in bed with Obama. And just there is the United Nations resolution under Chapter 7. Iran should not export or buy arms, and the representative of Iran, they should not leave Iran to Europe. And now they are meeting in Europe, even under Chapter 7. Just to show you there is a good relation. They are in bed together.
Okay, Mr. Kamaruddin, I have to stop you there because some of the claims that you're making, sir, are completely outrageous and a little bit hard to believe. Mr. Reza, going back to the point that I made
if
earlier,
you don't believe it because you came with fixed ideas, I'm telling you facts. Now Iran, they are
these are by no stretch of the imagination
can
these be considered facts, Mr. Kamaruddin. Let me stop you there because I do want to bring in Mr. Reza. I do want to bring in Mr. Reza and get his thoughts on going back to Lebanon, of course, looking at Iraq, the expansion of the Islamic State. Are we about to see that sort of expansion in North Lebanon along the lines of what we saw in Mosul?
We already did. I believe that the Battle of Hersal just the beginning. And only a short-sighted people who might believe that the things are going to be contained in Hersal. No, this is not true. That's why, because we have here dealing with the politicians who are involved in a plot against Lebanon and against their national country, against their national interests, because they are just employees to the organizations, and some of them are to some embassies, and some of them are for working for terrorist groups. And I can mention that Mr. Khalid al-Daher and Murabi and Kabbara are part of Al-Qaeda group now. They are not part, they went for the extreme hardliners of Al-Qaeda. And I can tell you why, because the defense minister, Mr. Fayez Ghassan, 2 years ago, warned the government that we have Al-Qaeda in Arsal. And everybody went against this minister and called him sometimes a stupid or a liar. And it turned out to be that his information were the source from the intelligence service or a bureau of the Lebanese army, and they were based on facts, upon photos and videos and informations of all groups are based in Arsal. And the Lebanese government, part of the conspiracy, part of those who are involved in this conspiracy against the country, didn't let the army do its job in Arsal 2 years ago. Now this is the conclusion of it, because now we are, instead of we were facing 200 or 300 Al-Qaeda groups about 2 years ago, now we are facing 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 are fighting in Arsal now. And then the groups who were kicked out of Syria, they all came to Lebanon, and they have their agenda against the Lebanese territories also. And we might see a very long war against terrorism inside Lebanon, inside some parts of Lebanon, not only Arsal.
Mr. Kamaruddin, do you agree with that, that this is the beginning of a very long war in Lebanon?
It might be. It might be. I'm not saying it might not be. But Mr. Rizq, please don't kid yourself. You've got a government or ever had a government in Lebanon. You cannot elect a president. You've got $50 billion debts in Lebanon, and you yourself as a government, you never elected a president. The president come from outside under our law. Lebanon, Syria, if we do not get rid of Hezbollah and all the terrorist group, not just Hezbollah, all the terrorist group, which they never believed in governments and the rule of law, if we do not get rid of them, that regime we will not, and the regimes, not just this, and the regimes as well, in Iraq, in Egypt, and all this lot, if we could not get rid of them,
Mr. Kamaruddin, I really appreciate your thoughts.
We always go in circles.
Do you think that, yes, we can get rid of Hezbollah and then hand over the whole country to the Israelis? And or maybe we can.
Why the Lebanese people they're not capable? The Lebanese people they're not capable.
Well, what Hezbollah are not Lebanese? Aren't they part of Lebanon? Aren't we Lebanese as Lebanese? I'm not.
They are a gang within Lebanon. They do not believe in rule of law. They not believe in government.
It's not the government. Well, as you said, maybe we have our difficulties with our political system, and that based on this sectarian system that we have inherited from the French. From the mandating French.
But you accept it.
Then I can tell you that get rid of Hezbollah and the Lebanese people. Well, the Lebanese, I can assure you that none of the Hezbollah fighters in Lebanon are not Lebanese. We don't have any Saudis or Yemenis or Somalis in our fighting groups at all. The resistance. Plus these secular parties who are fighting also and part of the Lebanese resistance, okay, they are fighting and they've been fighting against the Israelis. As you know that we have experienced invasions from Israel. Who protected us? No one. So we had to create this kind of resistance, and that I can assure you that they are all Lebanese, and none of them is being a mercenary or being paid for the fighting or to protect its country and the sovereignty of the country. No, it's not at all. They are Lebanese. They have a will. They have a belief in protecting the country, and they have a belief in the Palestinian cause, and they have beliefs in that, considering that the Israelis will be and will remain forever the first enemies, not the Arabs, not any other sectarian groups, not religious groups, not at all. The resistance in Lebanon did not have any intention to kick anybody out or to slaughter the Christians in Mosul or to kick them out of their houses, or maybe to kick or to burn churches in Syria as those terrorist groups did, and kill most of the Christians in the neighborhood where they have controlled. In Lebanon, the resistance didn't attack or didn't touch any minority group at all, despite the religion, despite the faith, despite the ethnic roots of them. Their main intention and main attention was paid to fight the Israelis, and they did a good job, which is most of those Islamic groups or Islamic countries couldn't do for ages and years.
Mr. Kamaruddin, how worried are you at least about the fact that a lot of what Mr. Rizza said there, these so-called Islamist groups that are pouring into the region, are sectarian-based organizations which are dividing the region along sectarian lines?
I regret your guest, Mr. Rizza. He cannot see the facts in front of him. Leave Palestine to one side. Nobody did anything to Palestine. Now in Gaza, the Gazanians, they were getting the missiles, and the rest they only talk. Leave Palestine to one side. Palestine will not be liberated if we do not get rid of this regime and these thick mullahs in Iran. If we do not get rid of them, Palestine will not be liberated. Get rid of them, you will get Palestine free. This is for a fact. This is a fact. You're talking about sectarian. The Sunni in Syria, they are over 80% of the population. We never be sectarian. We don't like it. That is not in our books. And we will never go to books sectarian, but the sectarian. I'll ask, I don't want to take long time.
The groups that are fighting in Syria, Mr. Kamaruddin,
let's cover more ground.
Sectarian.
But I will ask your guest one question. Do you believe in government, or you believe in militia within a government? Just this is a question. Do you believe Hezbollah should be a militia or an army within an army?
But you want,
I mean,
you
this
want
is
me to
a
answer,
simple
you want
question.
me
Or
to
you
answer,
believe in government?
You want me to answer that?
Please.
You want me to answer
Please.
that? Okay, this is very easy. The resistance in many incidents in history was part of the country, and the army and the official army cannot be a resistance. So since 1948 and the existence of Israel, what's so-called Israel, we always had fighting groups and we had resistance in Lebanon. But why didn't anyone object the presence of the...
sorry to interrupt you, but just to correct you, resistance will be within the country, not resistance outside the country.
Well,
resistance
let me tell you something now. Let me tell you something. Yeah, well. I do consider that Syria is my country too. So you cannot. So I have stretched the borders
and we
of
consider Lebanon is our country as well. Because of that, we're going to get rid of you.
I can tell you that. If I'm fighting the Israelis in the southern Lebanon, Mr. Kamaruddin, why can't I fight them in Qusair? What were the Israeli officers doing in Qusair? Aren't they the same enemy and the same uniform? Aren't they? They are. So if they are coming,
say again, I didn't get it.
Look, what the Israeli officers were doing in Qusair, they were Israeli soldiers, advisors.
Kill them. Tell me where they are. I will go and kill them.
High communication, telecommunications weapons were found in Qusair from the Israelis, and so many Israelis and Turkish and French were captured in Qusair. In many other places also in Syria.
It's not true. If you capture them, if you don't kill them, I'll ask our boys to kill them.
I do believe, yes, resistance remains in Lebanon. Resistance remains in its country. But when the Israelis will use other groups to come over and to destroy the mainstream and the strategic territories of the resistance is obliged to fight upon all fronts. If I want to return the question to you, what are those terrorist groups doing with the Israelis in Golan Heights? They are being treated by the Israelis, they are being protected by the Israelis, and they are being just trained and supported by the Israelis. How can you, if you want to liberate Palestine, that you are going to shake hands with those Israelis and cooperate with them? And one more question. Did Hamas in Gaza now, or the last war in Gaza...
Let's deal with one at a time. Let's deal with one at a time.
Well, I believe, Mr. Kamaruddin, I believe that every single rocket was fired at Israel was from Iran and Syria, was not from Saudi Arabia and Qatar. So those Palestinians in Gaza protected themselves and achieved victory, a clean, divine victory against these Israelis, by Iranian and Syrian weapons, not by camels exported to them from Saudi Arabia or Qatar. Not at all.
Okay, Mr. Kamaruddin, your response very briefly.
Let's not talk ridiculous, camel and this sort of thing. Let's talk facts. And you are a professor in politics. You claim you are a professor. Let's lift the level up. Let's lift the level up, please. But let me ask you one question. When you have Hassan Nasrallah saying, I believe in Iran, I do not believe in Lebanon. How would you accept somebody like this? He said, my will is to Wilayatul Faqih, not to Lebanon. I do not believe in Lebanon. How do you accept this as a Lebanese? How do you? And you're saying about people, they are with the Israeli. Anybody who's with the Israeli or put his hand with the Israeli, we will cut his hand and kill him. This is, point blank. I'm not going to go around it. Our revolution is for freedom and dignity. If you believe in it, join us. If it's not, you'll still be a terrorist and you'll still be against people. That's what it is in Lebanon. Hezbollah, that's what they've done. We protected them. They came to Qusair in 2006. Who protected them? Not a single Shiite went to Qardaha. Not a single Shiite went to Alawite village. And you say they are kafir, the Alawite. You say they are kafir. Not a single one. I'm telling you. But the trouble in Lebanon, there is no politician with the principles. They change their color every day. From Kamal Jumbla to all the Shia, to Nabil Barri, to Hariri, to all the slots, or to Aoun, to all the slots. You should have a principle and you should buy and fight for and die for your principle. If you don't die for your principle, you're not worth anything.
Okay,
There is
Mr.
no
Kamaruddin, I do have to
difference
stop you there. I
between
want to get
animals and
Mr. Riz's
people
thoughts
that
on some
don't
of
have
what you're
principles.
saying there, and then we do have to move on to another point. Go ahead, Mr. Riz.
Well, I believe that what I wanted to say, that Lebanon was the main, let's say, the main playground for the resistance before Hezbollah was even existed, and that was since the 50s and the 60s. And the presence of the Palestinian revolution was on the based in Lebanon since 1965. It was created in Lebanon, and it was backed up by the Lebanese people. And for the matter of fact that nobody talks about 13,000 young men, Shiite, died under the Palestinian resistance or revolution flags. Nobody talks about those people. Nobody talks, everybody denies that the Shiite, when they were fighting under the resistance of Palestinian resistance in Fatah and other organizations, nobody mentioned that we are fighting for those organizations or against those organizations. They were they were members, they were fighters with the Palestinians in the southern Lebanon, and they died into clashes against the Israelis, and they fought the Palestinian battles. But after the invasion of 1982 and the withdrawal of the Palestinian resistance from southern Lebanon and from Lebanon, so the Lebanese people had to form their own resistance, because we never had an army to protect. We had just a sort of an army, was not well armed, was not strong to be able even to control the country. So the people in Lebanon had to create their own ways to protect themselves. And that was the way that they were invented by some groups in southern Lebanon, and it became a part of the political system in Lebanon.
And certainly representative of a population demographic in Lebanon, as you said earlier. No, I mean, it's very difficult for anyone to deny the commitment of Hezbollah and the resistance movement in its fight against the Israelis and occupation over the years. Let's talk about the wider international community right now, the United Nations and these condemnations that have come from abroad towards these Islamic groups like the Islamic State, etc. Do you think that will play any role in help to de-escalate this situation in Lebanon that we're seeing at the moment?
Well, no, I don't believe so. The Americans, I believe that they feel now that they have lost control of some of those groups because they wanted to use them, and there was a saying to Miss Hillary Clinton. Now it's publishing a new book talking about how the deals with the Muslim Brotherhood fold after the falling of Mr. Morsi in Egypt, and everybody fall apart. So, and these are words of the foreign minister of United States, and also saying some for the CIA in 2006 that they wanted to create a new they wanted to create a new Islam, which is he said that's our Islam against their Islam. So now we have two Islams, the Islam of the West and the Islam of the East. So this is something very ridiculous. So that's why when Miss Hillary Clinton reveals such high secret or top secret information,
it brings us back to this whole discussion that we've been going in circles. Who is going to fight these people?
Well, who is going? Well, it seems that the Americans and the Israelis and the other countries, their allies, they want this country to be involved. Part of it fighting against the other part who is trying to protect this invasion of Al-Qaeda groups, and the other part is the Al-Qaeda and their supporters, despite who are they, how many countries do they believe, and how many countries do they support this kind of fundamentalist groups against this, to destroy this civilization. And I believe that when we see that the presence of the Israelis in Kurdistan shaking hands with Mr. Barzani, then we can understand where this conspiracy is leading the whole region.
Mr. Kamaruddin, you refuse, you actually blame the opposite side for what we're seeing in the region at the moment. Let's have your final thoughts then. How will things play out rather in the coming weeks and months from the Mediterranean all the way to Mosul?
With all respect to your guest, He came to the surface. He didn't cross the surface, just scratch the surface. What I would like to say and make this point, look, Iran Gate, Iran Contra, all of that, we know about it. Two wrongs, they do not make right. Two wrongs, they do not make right. If there is something wrong, we should say. Come to the internet. I don't want to go over the same ground again, but I would like your guest to come with facts, which he hasn't come. I want to go over to your question, which you said United Nations and this.
What fact?
Mr.
Kamaruddin, I showed you a very top secret document and you didn't accept it. So how can I bring facts to the studio with me? I have documents. I have documents on my laptop here, and you don't want to believe it. So if you don't,
perhaps we could talk outside this program, and we could exchange views. But
I don't
but
mind.
Let me just tell you, in 2012, I was on Sky News English, which is watched in Britain and America at the same time. They said Al Qaeda is in Syria officially in 2012. I said yes. The rule of the United Nations. There is an international law. They said we are stupid. We are the people they created themselves as the leader of the world. And they said if there is any Qaeda anywhere in the world, they say must. Every country must go and fight it. Come and get rid of it. But Al-Qaeda is the creation of God knows where, America and this sort of thing. And all of us, we know, Al-Qaeda, they were in Iran. The wife of Bin Laden, she came from Iran. His sons, they came from Iran. We know all of that. Our job, the United Nations and the world order, it can't be the same before the Syrian revolution. When they use chemical weapon, regardless, look, I don't want to come to the argument who did it, regardless, when they use chemical weapon against civilian and nobody does anything, just to show you this organization is rotten and corrupt to the core, we will not accept it. For me, at least, or for our people, United Nations is something of the past.
Okay, Mr. Kamaruddin, I have to stop you there because unfortunately we are running short on time. Speaking of evidence, there is no evidence to support any of those claims, of course. Mr. Reza, your final thoughts here about where do we go from here? What does the situation look like? You expressed some pretty pessimistic views there earlier about what will happen in Lebanon.
No, it's a very realistic. Let's say not optimistic or pessimistic. It's a realistic. We are trying to explain the situation realistically, so we don't get surprised, because even the government did not deal realistically with this situation. That's why we have this kind of, now we are drowned into this swamp.
No, because you don't have a government.
Nobody is trying. Nobody knows how to get out of it. So the government and the people and everybody should be prepared. We have a very long war against terrorism, and it's going to be either ways. Either you win life or you are going to win death.
Okay, gentlemen, on that note, I'm afraid that we have run out of time. I want to thank both of my guests, Mr. Ridwan Riz in the studio, and from London, Dr. Khalid Kamaruddin. And thank you very much for watching. Don't forget, you can catch us again at the same time next week. Goodbye for now.
Tampering with Arab societies under oppressive alien religious slogans, and who want to move Sikh practices to Lebanon. The only solution today is for the militants to withdraw from Irsal and its outskirts, and the return of the state with its agencies to this day Lebanese town.
This terrorist attack which happened yesterday did not take place by coincidence. It was not a spur of the moment. It was previously planned.